your right hand out, you put your right hand bend, and you shake it all about. You do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself around. That's what it's all about. You put your left hip in, you put your left hip out, you put your left hip in and you shake it all about. You do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself around. That's what it's all about. You put your elbows in, you put your elbows out, you put your elbows in and you shake it all about. You do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself around. That's what it's all about.
Okay, just to get you in the mood. When I did that at the Institute for Leadership Training, where all of the national leaders get together with ACA, they all got up and started dancing in the aisles. They started doing the hokey pokey. Really kind of interesting.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so we're going to have some fun. I had a lot of fun. I actually had a lot of fun putting this presentation together. So we're going to be spending an hour or so talking about avoiding death by PowerPoint. Ostensibly, this series is supposed to be about your dissertation and kind of like your dissertation presentation. If it's okay with you, I would like to focus more on the presentations you're going to be doing later on after you get your degree and go to conferences and things like that, in part because by the time you get to your dissertation defense, you have absolutely earned the right to bore your committee to death. And I don't want to take that away from you. Okay. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is really more meant for the presentations that you'll be doing later on. With the exception, there's one particular section of this which absolutely does apply to the dissertation defense and will make your dissertation defense PowerPoint better. Kind of identify that part when we get to it. All right, so avoiding death by PowerPoint, or as Dilbert, that scholar Dilbert says, as you can clearly see in slide 397, God, PowerPoint poisoning. All right, so you know who I am, right? This PowerPoint is available for you if you would like to download it. It's available on my website at www.counseling.org/kaplan. I'll put that up at the end.
Okay.
So, why me? Why am I doing this presentation? All right, a couple of reasons why I'm doing this presentation. I have given over 250 conference presentations, so I've learned a little bit about how to present. But more importantly, as Chief Professional Officer of the American Counseling Association, one of the perks I have is that I go to somewhere between 8 to 10 conferences a year. So I have gone to a lot of conferences, and I have seen a lot of presentations, and I have seen a lot of really crappy PowerPoints. I've learned from them, and I have seen some really bad PowerPoints from some really famous people and people who want to know better. So I've learned a lot about what not to do from watching those presentations, and some about what to do. So that's why I'm doing this. All right, the reason, we've got a lot of good stuff to talk about, but before we get to that, the reason I played you the hokey pokey before was to warm you up for this. My current favorite sign on a clinic. This is a real clinic, it's up in Canada. I think it's the sign.
That's a real clinic?
It's a real clinic, it's up in Canada, yeah, real clinic. It's actually, if truth be told, it's not a mental health clinic. It's a clinic for allergies.
Wow.
And the way they test for allergies is that they poke you with needles and put different things in your arm to see if you react to it. So that's why they call it the hokey pokey clinic, because it's for allergies. All right, so some lessons that I've learned and things we might talk about today. It's entertainment. Follow the pedagogy. Post, don't schlep. Sounds like Jeopardy categories, doesn't it? I'll take even theaters go dog for $200. Less is more. And consider it a medium because it is neither rare nor well done. So these are some of the things that we might talk about today. And I will give you Sam Gladding's famous line from his presentations, which is, if these things are not what you want to hear or talk about, feel free to leave. You've got valuable time, and I give you my permission to leave because you'll probably do it anyway, so I just want to give you permission. All right, so let's start to go through this. And please, everybody in the room, contribute. All right. That's entertainment. It's neither good, it's neither bad, it just is. And in this day and age, people expect to be entertained. Now, content is king, so you have to have content. You can't get by on fluff and just entertainment. But people expect you to entertain them, even on a research presentation, when you're presenting your content. Okay, so you need to think about that. One of the ways to do that is to think about a warm-up of some sort, like a hokey-pokey thing.
Okay.
Cartoons are really nice, but in some way at the beginning to communicate to your audience, hey, there's going to be some fun in here. This is going to be deadly boring and just numbers and data thrown at you. This could be a little fun.
Even during a dissertation defense.
Well, see, that's why on a dissertation defense, your committee doesn't deserve to be entertained. They deserve to be bored to death.
Yeah.
So it's a little different with a dissertation defense. But I'll tell you, if you could find a good cartoon about research that they would appreciate, you know, maybe you're doing a factor analysis, whatever you're doing, and there's a good cartoon or joke out there about factor analysis, yeah, I think you'd get some points by including it. So think about that. So let me give you a few examples of some cartoons that I have used over the years. I do a lot of leadership presentations. So this is one of my famous cartoons to show at the beginning of a leadership training. It's a deal breaker. I'm moving to a shared leadership model. Each of you will take one piece of the leadership role. What's my piece? Let's see, I have you down for something called blame. Leaders seem to relate to that. This is one of my all-time favorite leadership cartoons. You won't be able to read the bottom part. It's obviously Noah's Ark. So let me read it to you. Everything I need to know about life, I learned from Noah's Ark. 1, don't miss the boat. 2, remember that we're all in the same boat. 3, plan ahead. It wasn't raining when Noah built the ark. 4, stay fit. When you're 600 years old, someone may ask you to do something really big. 5, don't listen to critics, just get on with the job that needs to be done. 6, build your future on high ground. 7, for safety's sake, travel in pairs. 8, speed isn't always an advantage. The snails were on board with the cheetahs. 9, when you're stressed, float a while. I like that one. And my absolute favorite is for leaders is volunteering. Remember, the Ark was built by amateurs, the Titanic by professionals. So you're giving them a message that you value what they do in kind of a fun, creative way. I'm trying to anyway. And the last example I have, a cartoon that sometimes I show when I go to conferences where everybody's flown in and everybody's been in an airplane to get to the conference. And they're all counselors. You're allowed one small carry-on, but each additional piece of emotional baggage is an extra $10.
I like that.
So think about it at the beginning, kind of doing something a little fun, some entertainment of some form. Follow the pedagogy. Think about the pedagogy of PowerPoint presentations is very much like the pedagogy of teaching a class that we teach you. Okay, and it boils down basically to, now we violate this all the time, but the general rule that we use is tell them what you're going to do it, and then tell them what you've done. Okay, which is why at the beginning I put up the slide with the bullet points and said here are the things we're going to talk about. Okay, so you can kind of get your mindset on what you're going to be doing. It's important with presentations, again, this doesn't really apply to the, well, for a dissertation, it's not a bad idea to tell them what you're going to do. Okay, this is not a bad outline for the dissertation. But for the presentations you're going to be doing later, you really want to give people the opportunity to say, you know what, I thought it was going to be about this, but it's something else. There's another one I want to go to. And if you do that up front, it gives them a chance to go someplace else rather than sitting there for 20 minutes and saying, I could have gone to this other presentation.
Because most people look at the topics anyway to determine if they're going to sit in the presentation or not.
But sometimes it's hard to tell from the description.
I know.
Exactly what it is. I was just at the ACES conference, and I went to one presentation which ended up being very different than the description. You just never know. Okay? So give people a chance to leave. Because the ones that stay will then be engaged. What
Right.
you don't want is, you don't want people in the audience checking, they're talking to each other, checking their emails, that kind of stuff. Know your audience. One of the tricks to avoid death by PowerPoint is not to do just a generic presentation. Think about who your audience is, who's going to be sitting there, who's going to be sitting there in your dissertation. What do they want? When I just did a presentation on current issues at the ACES conference, I knew that it was counselor educators, so I added quite a bit of stuff and very much focused in on current counselor education issues. I took a number of quotes out of a recent counseling psychologist that talked about pedagogy and talked about master's programs and psychologists wanting to reclaim master's programs. The counselor educators loved it. They were really into it. My next conference in a couple of weeks is the Virginia Counselors Association conference. It's going to be mostly clinicians, practitioners. I'm going to take those slides out because they couldn't care what the counseling psychologist talks about in terms of psychologists reclaiming master's programs. So I take those slides out. So a lot of times when we do presentations, we're thinking about us and what we want to do. Okay. So the analogy is for ethics. In ethics, we talk about we're here for the clients, they're not here for us. Okay. So as presenters, we're here for the audience, they're not here for us. So rather than talk about what do I want to present, think about what does the audience want?
That's true. Because I taught an undergraduate class here. Actually, I'm teaching one tonight. We started at 6:30, but it's an undergraduate class in the psych program. And it was on theories, personality theories. So it was only maybe about 7 students, small class, but they were all at different stages of their program. Some were first year, some were closer to like junior, senior year. So I went over like all the major theories, the psychoanalysts, the behaviorists, all the major theories, but I really had to like really teach it like an introductory psych class because many of them, Sigmund Freud, who was he and what did he do? Like, I never heard of these people or anything. So it was like, oh my goodness, I really have to tell it, even though I know it and I'm talking and so I have to change even some of my terms, like what I'm saying, because they don't know what psychosexual stages mean. So really have to like educate them.
And that's why you'll see a lot of presenters, appropriately so at the beginning, asking questions like, let me get the temperature of the room. How many, this is a presentation on changes in the ACA Code of Ethics. How many of you are familiar with the ACA Code of Ethics? How many are you familiar with the concept of confidentiality? Well, if they are, fine. If they're not, meet them where they are. Same thing with questions. Same thing with the dissertation defense, and especially with the research techniques that you use. It's important to gauge your committee in terms of how familiar are they with the particular approaches and techniques that you use, because you may need to either go on the more basic side for those who don't know it, or start at the more advanced level for those who do.
Yeah, I see them, I have to do it. One of my committee members, he's from the business program. So he's actually my teacher for Professor Quantitative. But so this topic is, probably, I really had to, like when I defended my perspectives, I really had to, like he really wanted me to talk more about the history of mental illness because I didn't do too, I just kind of assumed like, okay, well, they know this, but that wasn't the case. So I had to really dig into the literature about mental illness and stigma and all of that, because I may have people in there who may not be familiar with it, or even other students. So.
Post, don't schlep. The days of printing out 25 to 100 copies of your PowerPoints are over. And schlepping them on a plane somewhere are over. Instead of making copies for people and go green, it's much easier. Post your PowerPoint somewhere. So let's brainstorm. What are the different ways you know about of how to post a PowerPoint that you create so that your audience could access it in the future?
I know like for the students, for undergraduate students, we just post in the course sharing area, doc sharing area. So that's for the courses here.
Let's say it's 5 years from now and you're director of mental health in Fairfax County.
I'm assuming I'll probably have some sort of website or something, like how much you have, so I can post it there.
Okay, so create a website or have your staff create a website and post it on the website. Okay.
I think that's probably the best way, it's a website,
Okay.
personal website.
Okay, some other options. You could post it to your Facebook page.
Oh, yeah.
You could use Dropbox. You know about Dropbox?
Not only just for the courses, like what we have here. Okay. Only for the courses
Well,
here.
Dropbox is a program where you can create a document, a PowerPoint, a picture, anything you want. And you install Dropbox on all your computers, and then once you put it in Dropbox on one place, it comes up every place else. So if you create, for example, if you create a PowerPoint at work on your work computer, then put it in Dropbox. When you get home on your home computer, you can access it.
Really?
There's a feature on Dropbox where you can give the public access to your documents or to any document you want. And so you can use Dropbox to give people access to any PowerPoints. So there are different ways to do it. But let people download your document rather than copy and hand them out.
Hi. It's been a long time.
How are you?
Fine, and you?
Okay, so we're talking about PowerPoint presentations and avoiding death by PowerPoint, especially on presentations that you'll do after your dissertation defense.
Okay.
Because as I mentioned, you have the God-given right, with all the time and energy and effort you put into an aggravation into your dissertation, you have the God-given right to bore your committee to death.
Thank you.
Three reasons why really you don't want to give handouts. One is because you don't want to kill trees and you don't want to schlep 50, 100 copies on a plane somewhere. Okay. But the other two reasons are, number one, you give a handout, now people are looking down and they're reading the handout instead of looking at you and paying attention to you. So by not giving a handout, you're forcing them to look up here and to listen to you. And the second reason is research has shown that the single best way to learn is to write something down. So instead of having the information in front of them, making them take notes, they've already started to learn the information you're presenting in a way that they wouldn't have if they just stared at a PowerPoint handout. Questions, thoughts on that?
Honestly, I like killing trees. But just for myself, like I like when presenters do hand out something because I like to take notes. And it'll force me to go back and refer to that if I need it. And it is handy. Like every presentation that we've had here, I've just saved all the PowerPoints. So I can have it like it's in my folder actually. I'll just grab it if I need to refer back to something. Plus I take notes.
Okay. Try it both ways, see what happens. But I think one of the things you're going to find is if you do a presentation with 30 people in the room, 25 of those people are just going to throw away that handout in the garbage. Okay. Is that really what you want?
No.
Wouldn't it be better to just have the 5 who are really interested in it, go to the website and download it? I don't know, just something to think about. Most people throw away their handouts or never look at them again.
Becoming a paperless society.
We really are. Okay. Next idea. Even theaters go dark. One of the things to think about with your presentations is that you are the star. You are the reason that people are there. You are the one they want to listen to, not the PowerPoint. If they're paying more attention to what's on the screen than they are to you, something's wrong. That's a mistake. The PowerPoint is supposed to be an adjunct to you. You're not supposed to be an adjunct to the PowerPoint. And as such, you don't have to use PowerPoint. Okay? One of your best friends should become the B key in a PowerPoint. You know what B stands for? Blackout. You press the B key. It goes dark. You can then talk. You can do an exercise. You can do whatever you want. Don't be afraid to use the B key and go dark, because you're the star of the show. Okay? You could even, I know this is blasphemy, but you could even do an entire presentation without using PowerPoint at all. You don't have to use PowerPoint. I've done plenty of presentations without PowerPoint.
And without handouts too?
Right, no handouts.
Wow.
No handouts. It's their job to take notes, and they'll take notes on what they think is important, and they won't take notes on what they don't think is important. It keeps them active. Having your audience take notes keeps them active, keeps them thinking, instead of a passive just sort of. So, as appropriate, if you think it's appropriate not to use PowerPoint, don't. There's no law that says you have to use PowerPoint at all, and don't be afraid to use the B key to block it out.
When I had Dr. Sutter for higher ed, teaching in higher ed, she said the same thing, like you shouldn't rely on PowerPoint. You should just, so she taught the class without PowerPoint, and then at the end of the semester, we had to teach a section as if we were professors and teach our classmates something, anything that we wanted, and we couldn't use PowerPoint. So we had to be creative and think of how we can engage the audience without the crutch of PowerPoint.
Yeah, she wasn't a fan of PowerPoint.
No, not at all. You had her
Not
too.
a fan.
You were in my class.
No.
Yeah, I'm in
Okay.
the same class, I think.
Okay.
She was not a fan of PowerPoint.
Yeah. So don't let the PowerPoint become the star. And related to that, less is more. PowerPoint is, well, let me say less is more. I want to show you a slide. This is not actually a PowerPoint slide, but I do a lot of travel, right? And so I tend to fly on United Airlines more often than not. And when I get on United, I look at the seat pocket in front of me, and I pick out the magazine, and I look at the magazine. And I always flip to the end, because there's a page in the end of the United magazine that I cannot believe. And I think, what were they thinking? And it's the page that shows their routes, okay, the United routes. Let me show it to you. That's from the United. That's from the United Airlines magazine. Really? Really? I'm supposed to make heads or tails of that? Do you have any idea how that is helpful to understand the routes of United Airlines?
You can't follow a single line.
It's like it's running all together.
The same thing's going to happen with your PowerPoints. If you decide that you've got to fit absolutely everything in a PowerPoint slide, same thing with teaching, by the way. When you first start teaching, you decide that students need to know absolutely everything you know about the topic. And you're absolutely determined to tell them absolutely everything. And on your tests, on your midterm or final, you're going to test them on every single thing that you taught them, because they should know everything. Well, that only lasts for one test, because after it takes you 17 hours to grade one test, you begin to learn to sample. And you begin to learn in teaching that less is more. It's better for students to know fewer things well than it is to be bombarded with a whole bunch of information and they can't remember anything. Same thing with PowerPoint slides. If you try to put everything in your PowerPoint slide, it becomes so busy and so crowded that nothing comes across. So the rule is, less is more. Come up with one basic idea that you want to convey, rather than this. The related idea is use slides as a placeholder. The idea of a PowerPoint slide is to put an idea up there. And then you talk and you converse and you have them look at you. And then when they say, wait a minute, what is this about? Oh yeah, it's about using slides as a placeholder. It gives them, it draws them back to what the focus is of the slide. Okay? Keep it simple. Use slides as a, any thoughts on that?
I just recall seeing some presentations that have like paragraphs.
Oh, and I'm going to show you some slides by from some very famous people who will go unnamed. Yeah.
Paragraphs, and it does become too much. I just remember like being an undergrad and having professors that, like you said, who want to give you everything, and you're just so bombarded. And PowerPoint slides, which is like everything, so you're constantly taking notes. Yeah.
So I did a presentation at the Pennsylvania Counseling Association. Let me give you an example. I did a presentation at the Pennsylvania Counseling Association on counseling ethics and some the newer concepts in counseling ethics. And I was talking about changes from the previous code of ethics to the current code of ethics. So I talked about clear and imminent danger disappearing and being replaced by serious and foreseeable harm. Fairly simple, kind of gets the point across. Notice that I put section B2A under there for them to refer to, and they had handed it, we gave them the code of ethics so they could look at it. Now what I could have done but didn't is I could have decided they needed to see B2A, and I could have tried to cram that all in here and put the entire B2A section in this slide. If I had done that, it would have ended up looking like that United Airlines thing. But any of these ideas would have been lost in the shuffle. So my thought was, let me keep it simple. This is what I'm trying to communicate. They can always look at section B2A later. Keep it simple. Use it as a placeholder. So what we did is by leaving this up, I then said to them, all right, look in your blue puppy, look at section B2A, what do you think? Let's discuss that. And we had a 10-minute discussion. Slide never changed, just kept it up there as a placeholder. They looked at me, I looked at them, they looked at each other. Had a 10-minute discussion. And another related idea. White space is to be treasured. It's the same principle in advertising. In advertising, they will tell you that white space is more important than the space that is filled by a design. If you put too much design in an advertisement, people don't know where to look, and things get lost, kind of like that United Airlines map. White space is to be treasured. Look at all the white space there, on the white space. Kind of interesting to talk about white space on a slide about white space. Does the slide get across the concept? Pretty clear what the concept is. Okay. And part of that is because there's a lot of white space. It's clear what you're focusing on. Don't clutter up slides. Sometimes I think people think that they're getting paid by the word on presentations. And the more words they get on, the person who dies with the most words on a slide wins. Okay. It gets too cluttered. Don't clutter it up. White space is to be treasured. Let me give you an example of a slide that didn't do a real good job with white space from a presentation that I did on 2020 Vision for the Future of Counseling. I co-presented with someone who will go nameless, but it was a past ACA president, okay, which narrows it down to 60 people, if you include the dead ones. Okay. And that was her slide. What do you think?
Is he too much?
Let's try an exercise. Close your eyes. Okay. And in a second, I'm going to ask you to open your eyes and look at the slide. And then I'm going to ask you to shut your eyes again. Okay. Open your eyes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Shut your eyes. What's the slide about?
I don't know.
Who knows? Do you know?
I have no idea.
Something about organizations.
28,
28 out of 29.
Yeah, 28 and 29.
participating organizations is as far as I'm
Yeah.
So does that not say to you that maybe that slide's too busy?
It's too much.
Okay, it's too much. And this was from an ACA president,
Mm.
okay? What could you do to make that slide less busy, increase white space? What thoughts do you have about how you would improve that slide?
The sentences are too long.
Yeah.
Make it more bullet point-ish. I mean, if there's 4 bullet points are nice, but they're just, the sentences are too long.
Maybe just have one bullet point for the whole slide, and that would be like the definition of what she's saying
Okay.
with the.
So that gets to the use of white space and condensing. So for the first one, instead of, you don't necessarily want to speak in whole sentences. Instead of saying 28 of 29 participating organizations endorsed the 2020 statement of principles, what if she had just said endorsed by 28 organizations?
Yeah.
And then she could say it was endorsed by 28 or 29. You don't have to put it in the slide. She could have said the 29 part verbally, and then it would just have said endorsed by 28 organizations. Okay. Last one could have said state licensing board endorsement, and then she could have explained that.
I hate to go off topic here, but what is the 2020
Oh.
Yeah,
consensus
what is
definition?
2020 A Vision for the Future of Counseling is an initiative that started in 2006, just officially ended, but we've still have a lot of work to go to implement it. It's the United Nations of Counseling. It's the 31 counseling organizations within our profession working together to proactively plan where we strategically want the profession to go. One of the things we came up with was, one of the historic accomplishments, was the consensus definition of counseling. So now we have one definition of counseling, what it is we do, that the profession of counseling endorses, rather than all these myriad number of definitions.
Where do they meet? Where do they meet?
We met once a year in person at the ACA conference and then did the work in between electronically. If you're interested in 2020, go to the ACA website at counseling.org, then click on I can't remember which tab it is. It's the tab on the left at the top, and then there's the 2020 website is there. So there's a 2020 website on counseling.org if you want to learn more about it.
I have just a quick thought too on the PowerPoints. I also think that a lot of times it has to do with the messiness has to do with also the font and color of the slides, and sometimes you
Absolutely.
put all the designs and all of that.
Absolutely. So what could you have done differently here with the color and font?
I probably would change the background of the.
Yeah, I think I like the title, summary of 2020.
Yeah.
Those letters are a little slimmer. And
Yeah.
it seems like the bulkier letters just take up space.
Right.
Flavor.
So one of the differences, and this is one of the tricks, and we're actually going to talk about this a little later. One of the differences between this and this is that these are bolded
Yeah.
and these are not. So one of the tricks to increase visibility is to bold your words. You might have, depending on what you wanted to emphasize, if she wanted to emphasize the 28 here of 29, she might have made the 28 a different color, maybe a blue, a dark blue. If she wanted to emphasize the 29, she could do the 29. If you make any of these words a different color, it will draw your eye to the word and highlight the word. But you're absolutely right, those are all ways to do it. Good. All right. The number one complaint that we get at the ACA conference about PowerPoint presentations is, what would you guess? The number one complaint we get is
Too long? Too much? Long sentences?
related. I couldn't read the slides. Okay. I sat in the room, I took my time, I paid all this money, I couldn't read the damn slides. Okay. You want to commit death by PowerPoint? Make slides that people can't read. one of the things and you see, this is probably the biggest egregious problem that people who are supposed to know better about PowerPoint commit. They make slides people can read. Now, one of the reasons they do that is because you have to think of the typical presentation at a conference. And you're going to be doing lots of conference presentations. Typical conference room is probably 4 to 10 times this size. So when you're putting together your PowerPoint, you're sitting in front of a computer, and you're saying, I can see it. Well, that's because the computer is 18 inches from your face. You're going to be in a room where people are 10 to 20 or more rows away. So what you could see at 18 inches, they can't possibly see in row 5, 6, 7, 10, 15. And you have to think about that, and people don't. So let me give you another example from a counseling leader, a very famous counseling leader who will go unnamed, with a presentation. Which presentation was this from? This was from a presentation we did together on the Ward v. Wilbanks legal case. That was his slide. If you're sitting, let's say we have rows here, and you're sitting 15 rows away, are you going to possibly have any idea what this is?
I can barely see it from here.
Yeah. So think about sitting twice as far away as you are now. Okay. And we're going to talk some more in a little bit about how to deal with that. If people can't read your slides, and you're talking about the slide and they can't read it, best way to piss them off. Best way to piss off an audience is that they can't read your slide. Don't let it happen.
Or lose on those sitting and checking it either.
I'm learning as much from your examples as from your presentation, because I'm like, what is the Anderson? How far away am I from what I'm supposed to be doing for a living? I don't.
Now let me give you.
Just a real quick. I mean,
I'm sorry?
what was the Anderson Hendelman? What was that?
It's a textbook.
Okay.
This is a textbook. Yeah.
Okay. Adopted from there. Okay, but what was? Okay.
This
I got
was
you.
a slide that the Ward. Do you know about the Ward v. Wilbanks case?
No, that's what I want to know.
Oh,
What was
okay.
that?
In a nutshell, the Ward case is a seminal case in the profession of counseling, where a graduate student, Julia Ward, refused to counsel a gay client.
Oh,
I
and
remember
this is
that.
No, it's at Eastern Michigan University.
Yeah, I remember that from
Okay.
class.
This is happened in California.
And so then they dismissed her from the program as a violation of the ACA Code of Ethics.
Mhm.
She claimed that it was a violation of her First Amendment right to practice her religion. The
Mhm.
bottom line is we won. The counseling profession won. The courts ruled in both cases, there are two cases, that we have the right to enforce the ACA Code of Ethics. Okay, so this part of the presentation was about how do you help people think about their values, and how do you help students work through their personal values and not let it interfere in counseling like Julia Ward did.
I think you call it the Michigan University case or something.
Eastern Michigan.
Yeah, we took the class. That's why I couldn't remember the lady's name.
Yeah, that's
I remember the case.
Okay, so another example of I couldn't read the slides. Now I want to show you a couple of slides that I just took last week. I took these slides, I took a snapshot of these slides at the ACES conference. Now these are counselor educators. These are people who are supposed to know better. Okay, here's a presentation.
Are you
Oh my
serious?
Okay. Can you, now it's a bad picture, granted, but it was taken with an iPad, which is not bad. Can you possibly read that?
No.
Okay.
Teacher preparation.
Okay. Now what's the problem with that slide?
Light.
Problems.
The color.
Yeah, what were they thinking? To have a light blue
Yeah.
on a blue background?
Yeah.
What were they thinking? And it was actually more white than that. So here's the other picture. I was in the third row. So here, I zoomed in on that. Here was the actual picture from the third row where I was sitting.
You zoomed in on
Okay.
that? Oh my God.
How are you possibly going to see anything?
Like a white
Wow.
screen.
And I'm sitting there going, they're talking about all the stuff that's up on the slide. I can't see a blessed thing. Notice there aren't very many chairs in front of me, okay?
Yeah,
So
right.
people leave. And people need to read your slides. Okay, we'll talk about that. We'll come back to some hints about that. All right, next issue. Don't read your slides. If you read directly from the slides, they become the focus rather than you. You don't want audience members staring at the PowerPoint. You want them looking at you. And they certainly don't want to see your back. They want to see your smiling face. So if you read directly from your slide like I am doing right now, you will be perilously close to committing death by PowerPoint.
I think people do that because they're not really familiar with the topic.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah.
So one of the things that says is that you got to practice.
Yeah.
You know, I can't tell you how many times I really don't like presenting with other people. And I don't like presenting with well-known people because inevitably they just show up 5 minutes before the presentation and kind of wing it through their slides. And they don't know what they're talking about. You know, they haven't reviewed it. And so they're reading off of slides. You have to practice so that you can talk without looking at your slides.
Do you find though for like students, going back to dissertations, like for dissertations you've chaired or co-chaired, that many students like can speak without, I mean, because I'm just thinking in my head, like you should know, it's your research. So you should know this research like your first and last name, so you should not rely on the slide. Like it really should be just like you said, the black, what did you say, it should just be kind of like your background, like you should be able to speak about your research.
Right. So for example,
Right.
right. So you might want to put up a slide. Let's say multicultural theory is your dissertation is grounded in multicultural theory. So you might want to put up a slide that says multicultural theory
And talk about it.
and then talk. You don't look at the slide, but it's a placeholder. What you don't want to do is you don't want to put a 2-page quote from somebody about multicultural theory up there where they can't read it and you're turning around and reading.
Right.
You're going. Whoops.
I've done that.
Oops.
I mean, I put this presentation together for a class, and I know I put too much on the slides. It's like I almost put my entire paper on the slides.
Well, so bad. I did that for the undergraduate class I was teaching. I was telling Dr. KAPLAN about earlier. I was trying to teach them everything about Sigmund Freud and Jung and all these other people.
Right.
And I knew I put too much on the slide.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you're in good company. ACA presidents do the same thing.
Okay.
So you're in good company. Now you know better.
And the funny thing is, I was able to talk about those people without even
Yeah,
reading the slide.
Now you
Nice
are,
slide.
for your dissertation
Yeah.
defense, you are going to want to put charts up there and tables.
Right.
Okay, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. That's the one part I want to talk about, an approach to dealing with your tables and charts that you are going to want to put up. Okay. But let's talk then about busy slides. Okay, how do you deal with busy slides? And some of the ideas have come up already. All right, idea number 1, spread the information over multiple slides. For some reason, our mind is organized that if we have 7 bullet points about something, we want to put them all on one slide. You don't have to. Spread them out over 2 or 3 slides. It'll make things bigger. Okay. Use big type. Okay, you can change the font. Use big type, change the font. Okay. Think about how far back people are going to be sitting. They need to be able to read it. Highlight pertinent parts. Okay, so what I could have done was I could have made pertinent in red, and that would have drawn your eye to pertinent, and that's the key part of that. Okay. Expand the margins. Okay. Part of this is don't rely. A lot of people. One of the problems is people rely on the default in PowerPoint, the default margins and the type and the colors, and just don't know that you can change all this stuff. The margins, the default margins in PowerPoint are fairly narrow. You can move them out. Okay. Every time you move them out, you get more words on the line. It expands the type. So move the margins out. Okay, expand the margins. Dim previous bullet points. You know about dimming? Okay, that's what this is. There's a feature on this, really easy to use. It's an animation. You should explore the animation section. It's a button up at the top of PowerPoint. Explore animation. One of the things that you can do in animation is you can tell it that when the next bullet point comes up, dim the previous one, and you can tell it what color to do. So you can really do, and that's what I did here. Okay, so it go to the next one, and it dims it to a similar color to the background. So even though there's a lot there, it's easy to see what we're focusing on, because I've dimmed the previous ones. Okay, that's called dimming. Okay, now I've got 4 more bullets to go under dealing with busy slides. I could have stuck them all on this slide, but it would have made it much too small. So I went to another slide. Okay, so I just decided to go to another slide. Okay, acknowledge. Sometimes you do have to use busy slides. It's just part of the territory, and I'll show you an example. If you do have to use a busy slide, acknowledge that. Here's the technique. Tell them, I know this is busy, there's a lot of stuff on this slide, you may not be able to see this back there, but the reason I wanted to put this in is because when you download the PowerPoint, I want you to be able to have this material when you download it. Here's the reason why I gave you a slide you can't read, is because you really need this when you download it. A lot of you are going to want this citation and the complete quote. And provide a summary. Even though you can't see it back there, here's kind of what it says. It says that Julia Ward violated, okay. So you're telling them what it is. And then finally, if it's something that you're really going to be using, for example, if there's a chart that has a lot of information and you know they're not going to be able to see it back there, but you really need to go over the chart and you really need to have the entire chart, that you do want to make a copy and hand it out and say, I know you can't see that chart back there, so why don't you just look at the copy you have in front of you? That's okay, that'll work. Now, these are the standard advices to busy slides. There's a somewhat new one, and this is where your dissertation presentation comes in. There's an alternative now to PowerPoint, and that's Prezi. And you may very well want to consider doing a Prezi presentation for your dissertation rather than PowerPoint. Prezi was developed for people who do presentations that give detailed information. And the advantage, the thing that Prezi does that PowerPoint doesn't, is it allows you to zoom in on parts of what you're showing. So you can show a slide with your table, and then you can say, all right, let's look at this cell, and you can zoom in on the cell and make it large so everybody can see it, and then zoom back out and show the whole thing. Let me kind of show you. Let's see if this will work. Give you a brief little demonstration. That's not going to work because it has to see that's not going to work. When you download it and click that on it, it's a really nice little presentation. It'll show the zoom in and zoom out effect.
Okay.
All right, so here's kind of what we highlighted for busy slides. Here's what would have happened if I had taken, we covered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 points about busy slides. If I had used the default, this is the default setting, and if I had decided I wanted to put them all on one slide, this is what it would look like instead of that. Okay, which do you like better? You like this better, or you like that better?
First
Okay.
one.
So don't feel like you have to put it all on one slide. Don't feel like you have to use the defaults. Expand the margins, make it bigger, change the colors. And I have used busy slides. Here's an example that I've used from the Ward v. Wilbanks case, okay, the non-discrimination. Because I really did want them to see the entire section on non-discrimination as it forms the backbone of the case. So what I tried to do is to highlight the really key part, the sexual orientation. I bolded the sexual orientation, so at least when we read through it, they would see that that's the key point, and then I gave them a handout and said, probably not going to be able to see that back there. Look at your handout, let's look at section C5. Okay, now we get to the fun stuff. This is the last one. Okay, the last lesson learned, number 6. Consider it a medium because it is neither rare nor well done. Consider. Consider PowerPoint a medium like television is a medium. It's a visual medium. PowerPoint is a visual medium, yet we keep wanting to put words up there. We keep wanting people to read. It's not a book. It's more like television. It's a medium. So instead of words, think of visualizations, think of cartoons, think of sounds, think of videos. Think of alternate ways other than words to get things up there. So I wanted to give you some examples. Okay, so the slide in PowerPoint that should become your best friend, the letter that should become your best friend is a B, so you can black it out. The slide in PowerPoint that should be your best friend is this slide. Okay? That is the slide that allows you to very easily import videos, graphs, sounds, pictures, snapshots. Okay? Really easy to do. All you have to do is save whatever it is, save it to your hard drive, and it'll import it right from there. Really easy to do. So that this slide is the one that should become your best friend, and you should use a lot. So let me give you some examples. All right, I give an orientation to the program selection committee every year. The program selection committee that selects the programs for the ACA conference. And one of the things I tell them is the programs have already been rated, and they've got to trust the system. Their job, they've got to trust the raters and not second guess the ratings that have already been done. So I could tell them, you got to trust the system, or I can show them the picture. Maybe that gets it across in a little more creative way. Okay. I also tell them that their job is to tinker around the edges. Their job is to make fine changes, not to start all the way from scratch and rejudge the things again. So maybe a picture helps with that. All right? And tell them your job is to tinker around the edges. Okay? Visualization. All right. You can use sounds. All right. So then I tell them that the original ratings were all blind. Okay? At which point I then click on this. All ratings are blind. Just have a little fun with it. Maybe it gets the point across. All right. Here's an example of a video that I've used. I used it at the Washington Counseling Association. I did a presentation on family counseling for counselors involving families. When you're not a specialist in family counseling and just getting started, what do you do when you bring in families? Okay. So one of the points I wanted to make to them was when you start working with families, you've got to make small changes. Families can't handle big changes all at once. What's the term? That change is difficult. Take it slow. Okay. Now I could say to them, when you work with a family, change is difficult, take it slow. Okay, all right, that works. Or I could say, all right, change is difficult, take it slow. There is a seminal training film that gives us a demonstration of this, and it's that seminal training film called What About Bob? With Richard Dreyfuss as the clinician, and who's the client? Bill Murray as the client. And the technical term they use for this is baby steps. So let's watch just a short snippet from that technical training film, What About Bob, on baby steps.
There's a groundbreaking new book that has just come out. Now, not everything in this book, of course, applies to you, but I'm sure that you can see when it has the title exactly how it could help. Baby steps? It means setting small, reasonable goals, one day at a time, one tiny step at a time.
Baby steps.
For instance, when you leave his office. Don't think about everything you have to do in order to get out of the building. Just think of what you must do to get out of this room. And when you get to the hall, deal with that hall, and so on. That's it.
Baby steps.
Baby steps. Oh boy.
Baby steps. Baby steps. Baby steps through the office. Baby steps out the door. It works. It
Do you need
works.
to go?
Yes.
Hang on, can you give me 2 more minutes?
Okay.
And I'll just wrap up.
Just take one little step at a time, and I can do anything. Baby steps around the office. Baby steps around the office.
Okay, so maybe that's a little bit more memorable than just saying, take things slow. All right. So, what we talked about today was, this is the part where you tell them what you're going to do it, and tell them what you've done. What we've done today is talk about being entertaining, follow your pedagogy, tell them what you're going to do it, and then tell them what you've done. Post, don't schlep. Don't be afraid to use the B. Less is more, lots of white space. And incorporate lots of video and sound and things like that. We'll schmooze in a minute, but let me thank you for giving me a chance to do this. And okay, wait for it. Right?